This week's video is sponsored by Policy Genius.
If you have anyone relying on your income, you need life insurance. It's that simple. Policy Genius makes it easy to get life insurance done and done right. There's a feeling of relief and comfort from knowing that our loved ones are covered if anything should happen to either one of us. Policy Genius is your one-stop shop for finding and buying the life insurance you need. Getting started is easy. Click the link in the description box or head to policygenius.com/redpoppyranch and answer a few questions about yourself. In minutes, you can compare personalized quotes from top companies to find the lowest price and coverage you will need. You could save 50% or more on life insurance by comparing quotes with Policy Genius. Their team of licensed experts will help you understand your options and ensure you apply for the right policy. Policy Genius works for you, not the insurance companies, so you can trust them to offer unbiased advice and help you navigate every step of the shopping and buying process. When you're ready to apply, the Policy Genius team will handle the paperwork and scheduling for free. Head to policygenius.com/redpoppyranch to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much money you could save.
Okay, let me get some of the obvious stuff out of the way real quick. I can tell you everything I know about arc welding in less than 10 seconds and likely have 5 seconds change. Ready? Here we go. Keep your arc in the puddle. Who cares what your weld looks like as long as it's burned in deep? You're going to take most of it off with a grinder anyway. And 6011 rod, because it's what they had at the local farm and ranch store. My first experience with an arc welder took place about 3 years ago when I got the Hobart welder generator. And although the welder generator has 600 hours on it, most of those hours are from using it as a generator while I was building the house. I've likely spent less than 20 hours welding. And every time I do, I learn a little bit more, and I get just a little bit better. To me, repairing this excavator is fairly simple. It all revolves around basic common sense. But if I didn't feel confident that I could fix the boom, I never would have purchased the excavator. Okay, I'm using this new piece of steel kind of as the backbone in which I'm going to square everything up to. So assuming I cut it square on both ends, now it's just a process of tacking it in place. And then I'm going to roll it down, put a couple small welds down. Then I'm going to put some relief cuts in the boom and try and get this thing lined up. I could have taken the boom off of the excavator and had it professionally repaired. I could have sent it off someplace that would use the latest and greatest technology to make everything as square and plumb and precisely repaired. And having something like that done would probably cost between $5,000 and $8,000, maybe even $9,000. Or I could spend a few $100 and fix it myself. And maybe it's not going to be quite as pretty, but it'll work. So that's how much I need to bring the boom over. So I'm gonna put some relief cuts in here, but I need to leave enough meat to where I can still move this thing around without doing too much damage. Same thing, I'll put a relief cut probably somewhere right in here. See if we can't straighten her back out. Taking into consideration what I paid for the excavator, repairing as much as I possibly can here at our place falls completely within the scope of work. Plus, as you're aware, I like to work on stuff, especially if I can save a little bit of money along the way. The only way I'm ever going to get good at using the arc welder is to use it. If that means I might have to fix one of these welds at some point down the road, that's a gamble I'm prepared to take. I'm trying to take into consideration where I'm going to put the relief cuts versus how I'm going to repair it. I don't want all of the welds to line up in one common place. That's going to be a weak point. So I have to repair this side, I have to repair the bottom, and I have to repair the other side. And however I do this, I'm trying to take into consideration how my welds are going to line up so we don't have another place where it's going to break again. I'm using 6011 rod and nothing else. In some cases, I'm having to make a couple of passes because that's what's required. The way I weld on metal this thick is to keep the welder turned up and burn it in as deep as I possibly can. And if the grinder's required to make it look halfway presentable, it's okay. It is officially time to see if we can get this boom to straighten out a little bit. I cut the reliefs in it last night. Now I very, very carefully am going to start it up and try and set that boom out in front of it and just push on it a little bit and kind of see what happens. it wouldn't idle like this the other day because the hydraulics kept killing it, and I played around with what would have been the hydraulic ram that they looped back together. I actually just touched it, and that seemed to have been the issue. It just relieved the pressure, and now everything's functioning as it should. Now to secure the relief cuts and to get everything lined up, basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my big C-clamps and bring that piece of steel in line with the seam up front, then weld that seam up front and put a couple of strips on each side just to secure everything in place so it's not going to move around. Then I'm going to start cutting the bad stuff out. I had a friend tell me if you have to use a grinder to make your welds look good, that makes you a grinder, not a welder. I'm a grinder. I've been contemplating buying a very nice wire feed welder like a Miller 210 or a Miller 211, something like that. But I knew my arc welder could handle this job just as good, if not even better, than a wire feed welder. It's just not as pretty. But as far as welding metal together, people have been doing it a long, long time with a good old-fashioned arc weld. As far as the hydraulic ram is concerned, I think the shaft is savable. I will have to find a machine shop that can re-sleeve that cylinder and make sure the shaft is true and straight. Then all I have to do is get it back on the excavator. The evolution of the excavator here at Red Poppy Ranch has been a fun one. But I don't see any reason why we won't have this machine here for a long, long time. When I first laid eyes on our property, I knew that an excavator would be the only way that I could effectively and efficiently do something with our land to make it usable. And we've given a few excavators a try along the way. But in every situation, just getting the piece of equipment here to our property is often a major challenge. When the road is in the best of conditions, we've had trucks and trailers up here delivering and picking up smaller equipment. But if you've been following along since the beginning, you know that the very first excavator we had up here was not a small piece of equipment. Once I got the excavator in here, I was worried I was never going to be able to get it out of here. Okay, now I'm going to cut the bottom plate off, and I have a new piece to fabricate in there so I can at least have the top and the bottom secured. Then I'll cut the damaged section out of the boom, and then I got to go to town and see if I can find a piece of steel that big. That's going to be my issue. So after having big and small excavators up here, the happy medium is about 15,000 pounds. That's an excavator that I'm comfortable climbing hills in. It's big enough to get the jobs done that I need to get done around here, yet still small enough that it is maneuverable and can be hauled on a trailer if required. I do not plan on hauling the excavator from here on a trailer. As a matter of fact, the insurance that I typically keep on my equipment requires that the equipment stay right here at our place. But I suppose if I had to, I could haul the machine in to get repaired or something like that. Let me just say that welding is one of those things that someday I hope I'm really, really good at. And the only way I'm going to get good is from experience. Naturally, it always helps to have somebody looking over your shoulder that can teach you how to do some of these things. But in my life, in some cases, I didn't have that opportunity. Or maybe I just didn't want to let somebody look over my shoulder and teach me the right way to do things. So this is how I get to learn. When I first met my wife's biological father, I realized very quickly that that man had forgotten more than I would ever learn. One day I went out to his shop and he was repairing the bronze screw on the lid to his irrigation port, using nothing but a torch, a file, and some brazing rod. I watched that man repair that irrigation lid so it could be used for many years to come. Cedar's dad was very, very good working with his hands, whether it was welding, mechanics, or team roping. He loved to team rope. Using nothing but hydraulics, servos, and automation more or less, he would go on to build an automated roping dummy that he could train his horses with. Cedar's dad has earned the right to take it easy, and he's keeping warm down there in sunny Arizona, but this is definitely one of those projects where I'd love to have him looking over my shoulder along the way. I was fortunate to be able to work with a good group of guys that still knew how to do some of the old tricks of the trade, like pouring a lead joint when working with cast iron, and many other things that the world would eventually phase out and find a better way to do. When it comes to working with your hands and many of the trades around working with your hands, it seems there has always been a journeyman apprentice process to these things, meaning the experienced or the elders teach the next generation. And when it comes to the journeyman apprentice tradition in the trades, there's always been a lot of pride around both. But this all revolves around the experienced teaching the less experienced, and the less experienced putting in the time and respecting the process. A traditional apprenticeship can be as long as 7 years for a reason. It takes time to be proficient at some of these things. I remember the process just like it was yesterday, as I had on-the-job training in the daytime, went to school in the evenings, and ultimately became a journeyman plumber. I always enjoyed spending time around Cedar's grandfather because I knew at some point he'd likely do or say something that was new to me. But when I first met Cedar's grandfather, he taught me how to make a traditional Native American tomahawk. And one of the tomahawks that he made was done so well that it was actually thought to be a real, genuine Native American artifact by a Southern Arizona University professor. Cedar's grandfather sat back and smiled as this man examined the artifact, and the man could not believe that it was a modern-day recreation. Okay, tomorrow morning I'm going to run down and pick up the steel that I need to start putting this back together. But while I have that open, I'm going to reach up in there with my angle grinder, clean up the back sides of some of those welds, and actually put some effort into some of those welds, maybe even put some fish plate on the back side and just try and stiffen that up as much as I can. Anyway, I'm gonna weld everything as good as I can weld it. When that academically trained professor examined that tomahawk that Cedar's grandfather made with a welding pick and a grinding stone, the man could not believe that her grandfather could duplicate the same techniques to build a replica that would trick an expert in this field. I watched Cedar's grandfather work with his forge and anvil and hand make all of the custom door handles for all of his cabinets in his handmade adobe house. And he worked with his hammer like it was part of him. I had no idea that Cedar's grandfather had blacksmithing skills like that. It is no longer out of square. One of you guys recognized how much we use our wheelbarrow and how much easier it would be to use if we had 2 wheels on it. Bob, thanks for sending the conversion kit for our wheelbarrow. This is one of those things that once I used it, I slapped my forehead and said, duh, so necessary. As far as the skills that I have, I don't know that I'm great at anything. But I think the thing that separates me from most people is I'm not afraid to try. I think most of the time people make a bigger deal out of things just simply because they don't understand what's going on. I also have talked about this before, but whenever I come across a project that I feel is out of my league, I oftentimes want to meet somebody that does this thing. And usually once I meet that person, I realize they're very similar to me, and that means there must be a way for me to learn what they know. If my IQ is compatible, I'm willing to try. But more than anything else, I'm willing to fail. Failure is the simple price of admission here at Red Poppy Ranch, without question. And at times the hardest part about failure is I get to do this in front of you. If these welds crack at some point down the road, I will fix it again. Maybe next time I'll be a better welder. Okay, now that I got the 1/4-inch plate cut out, I know what I have left. I can start making a bunch of little fish plates that I'm going to use. But what I want to do while I have the opportunity to, what I want to do is get up inside that boom and put some fish plates on the inside of those welds. And then also on top of that, burn those welds in as hot as I can. And just try and minimize any chance at any future cracking of these welds. To me, repairing this boom is very, very simple. It comes down to 4 different pieces of steel, a welder, and getting the boom as close to straight as you can visually see. And in the process of replacing the damaged metal, the new metal must be as strong or stronger, preferably, so this doesn't happen again. I started with a 4-foot long piece of 10 inches wide by 3/8 of an inch thick steel that I would more or less use for the backbone on the boom. Once I welded that first piece in place, that was my visual line on which to line the boom up. I got it as close as I could see it with my eyes, which was more than good enough. Then I started cutting the damaged metal out until I could reinforce the bottom side with that same 3/8 thick, 10-inch wide piece of steel. Once I got the top plate and the bottom plate installed on the boom, I was free to cut everything out that was damaged at that point, and then rebuild as needed using 1/4-inch plate. I must say that I'm enjoying doing this project so far. Everything is basically going as I assumed it would. I feel more than comfortable in doing the job. As I'm laying my welds down, naturally the welds are getting better, but I can see that it's going to hold up, and it should last a long time. Three 1/8-inch steel on the top and bottom of the boom, 1/4 inch plate on the sides. That's basically how it was built at the factory. In a couple different places I was able to cut on factory welds and re-weld it there. So hopefully it's just as strong as it was originally from the factory. For me, life is a constant opportunity to push my limits and push the limits around me a little bit. I've never had an interest in extreme sports or anything like that. I just simply want to do things my way and live with the consequences of doing things my way. I love to push the limits of comfort a little bit, and this job is doing that just enough. But the truth is, I'm afraid to try yoga with my wife. I mean, who really needs to be flexible anyway? Rather than putting exposed fish plates on the bottom side of the boom, I cut some pieces of that 3/8 steel to use for fish plate on the inside of the boom, over the top of where the new weld is. I'm now able to weld the backside and spread that stress out, hopefully preventing any chance of that weld breaking in the future. I've spent nearly 2 full days just welding and reinforcing and prepping everything. Again, doing my best to try and prevent that any damage would happen to the boom down the road as I use it. This excavator will be used with the thinning of the trees and stacking rocks mainly, so hopefully we don't ever have problems with it down the road. For the last 3 hours, all that I've been doing is back welding and burning in stuff that I'm not going to be able to get to once I put the 2 covers on both sides. With an arc welder, it's hard to weld above your head, and I'm not that good of a welder. My welds are hot and they're burned in deep, so I want to use the blade to lift the excavator off the ground and try and put that boom down as close to vertical so I can weld those horizontally instead of up like this. I can't put a whole lot of pressure on that boom. It'll bend if I do. So I think I'm going to try and do that now. I think I'm going to move everything out of the way and see if I can get to a better position to weld the underside and the top of the boom. Today I was able to go and find a somewhat local machine shop that's actually going to be able to rebuild that cylinder for me. The shaft was not damaged as far as we know. We're going to find out here shortly. But by having them do that locally, hopefully it'll be done very fast. So I have a whole lot of welding I have to do. It's not very fun, but I would like to be done with the fabrication by tomorrow afternoon.